All right, welcome. So this is, first of all, Nick here. I am joined by my friend Joshua of Joshua's Magic, great YouTube channel where he talks about esoteric and spiritual matters and I guess in a sense philosophy, right? I mean,
Yeah, and also magic, very much the magic, and video games to some extent.
yeah. So everything really worth covering, except what we're going to cover today, because you may have heard about this phenomenon known as OnlyFans. You heard of that, Joshua?
How could there be more than one if it was only?
OnlyFans. I
Wouldn't it
think
be only fan, only one fan? I'm the best fan, or something.
a chance for like fans of really obscure bands and stuff to send them money. I'm your only fan.
I'm the only fan of this one particular Dragon Ball Z fan fiction story.
You can't get that second fan, then you're not on OnlyFans. But OnlyFans, all of you out there have probably heard of it, but it's this. Basically, as I understand it, it is a subscription kind of service where so a woman, well, it's typically a woman and men too, will have an account on OnlyFans under which they produce adult material, and you'll sign up for their OnlyFans for a certain monthly fee, and you get this product when it comes out. So it just they'll be constantly releasing adult product, and you will receive it. There may be a little more to it than that, but that's my understanding of it. So this is, a phenomenon that sparked a lot of debate all over social media and whatnot. That that is this a cause or perhaps a symptom of a kind of social alienation? What does this say about the relationship between men and women? Where are we going? Um, and also, really, who pays for porn anymore? But so, do you have any like sort of anything to throw in the ring about that before we get started? Because what we're going to talk about, we're going to sort of hone in on this specific Twitter argument that we saw, um, that I initially saw and thought was interesting, and I want to sort of do a blow by blow of it, and we'll react to it and give our own thoughts and stuff. But do you have anything specifically to say, perhaps from a godly
Well, just the
perspective?
point we were talking earlier about doing the video, and you mentioned how OnlyFans is a little bit distinct from cam girls, and the cam girls, I guess, interact with people more online, and I guess
I mean,
OnlyFans
this is where, yeah.
I guess they just sort of put out content, and whoever's subscribed to them, gets to see it.
Yeah, that's my understanding. There may be some. I'm sure there's probably some kind of interactive element, but you know, uh, I don't understand the full economy of it. But it's basically you subscribe to a person and you get their porn that they put out. Um, so yeah,
Or
it's
just nudity, maybe. I don't know that it's actually porn or
I, I,
sex. There's
the,
sort of a distinction there, right?
there is, but I think it varies
Yeah.
as to what it actually is. So anyway, we're going to highlight this Twitter thread, and I'm hoping to follow it up with a different Twitter thread, which is in a similar but very different vein. But so this Twitter, it's not actually a thread; it's an argument, uh, uh, and it's basically this guy who I think is a really good account on Twitter, Yerk P. Yerk is a reference to something, but I'm not sure what it is. But it's at P-Y-E-E-R-K if you want to look at his account. But so he responded to somebody's tweet, uh, or it was actually a tweet thread he was responding to about OnlyFans. And this was very like OnlyFans positive, and um, so his response got a response from somebody else who he then got into this sort of protracted debate with. Um, and I guess I might as well call it that the person he was in the debate with was at Dark Sister 4. I hope saying that doesn't qualify as harassment or anything or bullying. don't go find her. Don't. Um, but so yeah,
I don't encourage people to write nasty messages to any of these people. That's not the thing
I
to do.
might want to edit that. I realized as I said it, like, oh, you shouldn't even. But so I'm just gonna like read this little by little, and we'll comment on it. So Joshua, are you ready to delve right into this?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just stretch out a little bit. I want to be relaxed for this. I don't want this to be an uptight endeavor, especially given the subject. Okay, so the original tweet. So remember, this is a tweet that he is responding to in his tweet. So the original tweet that he responded to, Ayala says, I don't think OnlyFans is introducing more promiscuity. I think it and stuff like WAP, for those that don't know, the hit single WAP by Cardi B had a rather sexually lurid video and subject matter. So I think it and stuff like WAP are symptoms of changing cultural tides in regards to seduction, not actual sex. The difference may be hard to spot, but I think it's extremely important. And she goes on to do a whole thread about that, which we won't get into. But so this is at P. Yerk responding to that. He says, this proposes that OnlyFans increases the scope for quote unquote female seduction. But at the heart of the masculine anxiety around it is that it is, if anything, depressingly anti seductive. Everything is already revealed and equally meaningless. So this is the thesis that's kind of like guiding the whole thing. So I think let's stop there a little bit and like let's talk about that a little. Let's chew on that. So what do you think here? Like, so the woman in the initial tweet is saying, like, look, this isn't. Now I don't know if this person like is saying that sexual promiscuity would be a bad thing or not, but she's saying it. This is not leading to promiscuity. It's changing the way. It's changing the means of seduction, right? The way women seduce men, I guess. So all this sexually lurid stuff, OnlyFans, WAP, it's all it's all part of the game of seduction, but it's not actually creating a more promiscuous environment, let's say. And
Let's rock talk.
let's rock talk about that. So yeah, first of all, what do you think about that? Is that
Yeah, I get, but I think his point is that it's not actually seduction because, yeah, there's nothing sort of implied or some song and dance. It's just, here's money, let me see you naked.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it OnlyFans itself is not necessarily seduction unless you want to say it's like perhaps in some cases an advertisement for a more transactional seduction. But I think maybe the point or part of the point is that stuff like OnlyFans and WAP being mainstream changes the nature of seduction. It trickles down in a way, right? Like it's so things are much more lurid and sexual, and that's
Well, I guess if you still want to call it seduction, it lowers the bar for it, right? Like, oh, you're showing your shoulder or something. Who cares? That's nothing. The starting point for seduction is, if free nude pictures of me, subscribe to my OnlyFans.
yeah,
So if you still want to call it seduction, it's going a step beyond, and
yeah.
and like
Well, it's like
seduction is now having sex.
yeah, it's seduction. Well, there's a lot that could be said about it, right? Like, I mean,
You could say you're seducing men out of their money with your body, but yeah, you could say it's changing the second definition of seduction if you're so inclined to look at it that way.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's like the baseline is sort of like there's these naked pictures of me that anyone can see for money, and this so the seduction, instead of like seeing more, the seduction is like, oh, but you can be somebody who actually experiences this in real life or something. Like anybody can just see it, but you can be differentiated from the consumer, and be like the actual sort of agentic, person, uh,
What does
operate
agentic mean?
like the person with agency. Like
Oh,
instead of,
okay.
I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. This is somewhat of a rough idea, but follow me. It's like, so anyone could just like buy my pictures, and anybody could just see this and see me naked, and that's sort of like this sort of not quite real consumer digital simulacrum or something, right? But anyone could buy into that. Anyone could just see me. But
Hmm.
you can experience the real object. You can have the thing in real time. You know what I mean? Like you can be the movie star, not the person who watches the movie or something like that.
You, the person watching OnlyFans?
No, I'm saying like seduction, right? So seduction, in the way that seduction, the normal sense of seduction, which is diminished by OnlyFans, right? Of like you were saying, I show some shoulder or something
Yeah, or you
or
flirt with
whatever.
somebody, or
Yeah, it's like, well, okay, that the progression there is you see shoulder, you want to see a little more, eventually maybe you see a little more, and whatever happens from there. This is more like, okay, seeing it is like something anyone can access, but you can, you know, there's value in being the person who actually gets to experience the real time individual, and not just this like this digital
I
byproduct.
mean, like if you're dating this person.
If you're dating, or even if you just have intercourse with them or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know, just a thought. um just going off, this is just
Of
like,
course, it's still somewhat. It's still sort of cheapened by everyone else seeing them naked.
oh, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's good ultimately, but it's just interesting. It's sort of postmodern, I guess. It's weird. um but yeah, so I guess we should get a little bit into this debate. So just so everyone remembers, right? So Ayala Girl, she has started off this whole debate by saying OnlyFans is not introducing more promiscuity. It's all this stuff like OnlyFans and WAP it shows a changing culture in terms of seduction, but not sex itself. Okay, so Yerk P responds, you know, if anything, the male anxiety around this is that it's depressingly not seductive, anti-seductive. Everything's already revealed and equally meaningless. So this is where this girl, the L, this account named the L, steps in. Um,
Let me correct you, Nick. I believe it's the L Ghost paperclip screwdriver. The last three parts are emojis.
yeah, yeah, and that's important, because that if you can't read the room, if you can't read her mood by her emojis, then you won't know how to talk to her. But she has responded to Yerk's initial claim. She says, which is exactly what men wanted. Men have perpetuated and enforced prostitution forever. This is exactly what most of you have wanted: easy access, not seduction. Women haven't really had a chance to do that. Men have mostly projected seduction onto us. There's a claim. There's a claim. It gets, there's more of a conversation, but these initial things I want to kind of, zoom in on. I want to freeze frame, because this is where the rest of the argument kind of flows from. So what do you think about this claim she made? Men have perpetuated and enforced prostitution forever. It's exactly what most of you have wanted: easy access and not seduction. We haven't really had a chance to do that. Men have projected seduction onto us.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of weird, these claims about uh Is sexual dimorphism the right word? What's sexual dimorphism?
Just men and women being different, basically.
Yeah, well, I guess in terms of culture and habits and uh, reproductive paths and stuff. So it's like, oh, men bring home resources and women have children and consume resources and care for the children. And it's like, oh, is the woman making the man go out stuff? You know, is the man making the woman have children? It's like it's sort of interconnected, these dynamics, and I don't know that you can say one is making the other one happen necessarily.
No, yeah, of course. And well, I don't know. I mean, you can infer like men have all this power, men have all this agency, but I mean, I don't know. There's parts of the argument where this becomes a little more relevant, maybe, but like, most men just like broke their back for 10, 12 hours a day supporting a woman and their kids together. And it's like, well, yeah, if you have all this coercive power and you choose to do that, I don't know. That like is that abuse? Maybe
The thing is, arranged marriage was kind of the thing for quite a long time. I'm no student of like the true history of the planet and how everything exactly was, but yeah, it seemed like arranged marriage was the note that was continually sounded. So I guess there's not really much seduction there. It's like, how much does your family bring to the table? Okay, maybe I can marry my son to your daughter, you know.
yeah, yeah.
But then again, you know about was it King David and Bathsheba? You know this story.
Not in full. Why
So,
don't
so King David, well, I don't know it fully either, and sorry if I get this wrong, but King David found the wife of one of his fellow Jews, one of his not underlings, but you know somebody who wasn't king, um, attractive, and he desired her, and she you know egged him on, like
What?
she'd go up and bathe on her you know the rooftop so that he could see you know her bathing herself naked, and that was you know it's funny that was a seduction, and that's kind of like OnlyFans where the seduction started with hey look at me, ooh, don't you want some of this? So it, you know it's funny to see that stuff way back then, and
Yeah.
then of course King David uh, tricked his or like ordered his the guy she was married to go on this like suicide mission sort of or something, and so he could marry her, and then he went crazy and stuff. So maybe that's what'll happen with OnlyFans. Who knows?
Um. Yeah. I don't know. Is the next King David watching OnlyFans? It could be.
I sure as hell hope not.
Could be. Um. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to parse. I wanted to establish these three main points, right? Because this is where the argument proceeds from. But yeah, men have perpetuated and forced prostitution. I mean, I assume when she says that prostitution entails marriage as it existed. Um, and so her argument is sort of that seduction is this feminine agency, this feminine power that we didn't really like men would, if they did something, they would blame the woman and say like, oh, she seduced me. But seduction isn't a real thing. Or not that it's not a real thing, but it hasn't been that much of a thing. We haven't really had a chance to do it.
I wonder though, you know, saying for instance that marriages were arranged, there's still room for seduction in other ways outside of getting somebody to marry you.
Mhm.
Like you know, and this is maybe broadening the definition of seduction, like you know, seducing them to a certain course of action, like the queen playing on the king's ear to do this or that, and you know that sort of thing. So you know, even within the confines of marriage, there's still potential for seduction.
Oh yeah, I mean it's of course that there's like so many married men throughout history have just been utterly controlled by their wives, and that's a large part of it, right? Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, so we got our three main points, right? This is about seduction, not sex. This is actually anti-seductive. Everything's meaningless. You're just there naked. And yeah, this is what men want. This is the market. Like you never really wanted seduction. You just want easy, immediate access. Okay, so Yerk then responds to this last post, right? So he says that last sentence is simply not true, LOL. Right? So the last sentence again was women haven't really had a chance to do that, meaning seduction. Men have mostly projected seduction onto us. He said that sentence is
Well,
simply
yeah. Go ahead.
is simply not true, LOL. And
Yeah, well, it is BS. I mean, if you sort of look at it as like, people were forced to marry each other, yeah, then you might come away with that idea. But like I said, seduction within marriage, and of course, ways that it's been employed outside of marriage.
yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, seduction is a power. It's not like, a specific, like there has to be a specific thing. And anyway, let me continue. That last sentence is simply not true, LOL. As to your other points, are we supposed to therefore accept OnlyFans as women's justified revenge against male desire? Sounds like marketing to me. Sorry. So now it's heating up. Is this just women's justified revenge against male desire? So basically, this is just like you're being sold this lifestyle. You're being sold this being a part of the OnlyFans empire through this narrative that like this is some kind of righteous revenge against male desire, or that you're taking the power back in some way. And the L says, revenge, oh boo-boo. Women being independent and not getting abused isn't revenge. You've got a lot to learn still. To which Yerk replies, OnlyFans equals not getting abused, LOL. She replies, yep, exactly, because it's consensual and distanced. Maybe you can learn. Okay, so what's your take on it so far? This is going in a new direction very suddenly, a new direction of conflict. New theater has opened. So
Well, I think they make a disconnect here, where they start talking past each other to some extent.
Okay.
And of course, with Boo Boo and LOL and stuff, it's like it's not trying to work out an intellectual conversation exactly, or at least not purely intellectual. But again, it is Twitter, so.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole thing about getting abused and not getting abused isn't revenge. Yeah, I mean, she sees it one way, he sees it another way. I don't think it is abuse though, but I think it's not healthy and virtuous.
What do you mean? I mean, I guess she's saying like being independent and not getting abused because they can use their seductive power or whatever to make money without actually having to, deal directly with men. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the whole independent thing, it's like, yeah, from a certain perspective, but if like you're like going as far as like showing yourself off naked for money, it's sort of like you're not independent. Like you can't make it at a sort of a decent, reasonable profession, that you're not like giving away part of yourself that's should be reserved for only somebody you're close to. It like independence sort of implies a kind of integrity and competence, I think.
But you're also dependent on like there being just millions of men out there who are willing to spend a bunch of money on naked videos.
Well, but I mean, you can make that argument about any profession. Like as a doctor, you're
but it's
dependent on
important.
people
It's
being
important
sick.
because it's like there are certain market conditions which are favorable to you, right? Like the state of sexual relations and relationships in general, being a certain way is more advantageous to you if you make your money primarily through OnlyFans.
Mhm.
Right? So
But
like if
the point about independence isn't, it's what they're doing is somewhat against independence, not the fact that they need customers. Because
I know what you're
everybody
saying,
needs customers to some extent.
but I mean, so what? Like, okay, maybe this woman could be a corporate accountant or something, but like, why the hell do that if you could just make money selling pictures of yourself?
Well, because you have certain standards you're not willing to violate.
But what standards?
Well, like I laid out there, like you regard your showing your body as perhaps symbolic of showing your true self, and you don't just do that for everyone. You don't just do that for money. Like there's some things that money can't buy, and if money can buy like the deepest level or symbolically the deepest level of you, then you're not able to actually offer that to a partner.
Well, I think our bodies were wired in certain ways where like sexual nudity and especially like revealing sexual parts of ourselves. The sexual parts of ourselves have a certain meaning, right? We're neurologically there's strong connections built between these our brain and these areas that have there's like all these nerve endings and therefore all these impulses flowing back and forth from the brain, right? um but there's also this natural, evolved sort of expected, this mechanism that's engaged, right? So if something's leading towards sex, it's connected to this incredibly powerful ancient mechanism that has a lot of uh, power in your consciousness. And so when you build these associations with sexuality, and with your sexual, the sexual parts of you, let's say, and your sexuality itself, it's like that has an effect, right? And even the whole thing of like having to, like, needing everybody to act like it doesn't have an effect because you want to be able to just do stuff with it consequence free, that itself is an effect, right? Like you need everybody to pretend like sex is meaningless if I want it to be, or sexuality is meaningless if I want it to be. But I also sort of reserve the right for it to be meaningful, maybe if I, you know, if I want that one day or if I find that. So I don't know. I think there's a neurological aspect to it. I think, you know, one interesting thing about it, this is like, I should be drunk for this because this is just a random ass idea I just pulled. I mean, you can shoot this idea to shit if you want. But I had this thing kind of came to me that like, well, okay, in previous times, right? If you're just sort of living in a smaller community and you don't have the internet, you don't have mass media and stuff, the social, like I talk about, associations, right? And so you have neurological associations with certain parts of yourself, with your sexuality, with the feelings associated with that. And if there's certain social consequences for it, or people in your town are going to feel a certain way about it, you quickly sort of, that comes to mind, right? That flashes to mind, that's a part, now that's a part of what you associate with sexuality, and you might stop yourself from doing something you'll later regret, right? Does that make sense?
I'm like I said, I'm tired, so I couldn't really follow it. But I
Like,
think it
I
makes
mean,
sense.
if you live in a
No,
small
don't
town,
re-explain for me unless you wanted me to.
no, I mean, this is our back and forth. The other people, if they don't like it, get out of here. But
Yeah, if they don't like me re-asking you to explain it over and over again, screw
I'll
'em.
explain it once. If you explain it again, if you ask again, I'll kick you off the street for being disrespectful. I think, so if you live in a small town or whatever, and there's some degree of religion even, it's like you second guess what you do sexually, basically, right? And so that's burrowed into your brain. That's a part of your sexuality now, that before you do something sexual, it pops into your head oh, this is going to be thought about a certain way if people find out, or
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be, right? And so I was thinking how this OnlyFans stuff and this, generally like, all kinds of women and girls doing porn, well, let's say women, 18 plus is women. um, but yeah, it's like all these women doing porn. It's OnlyFans. It's like it's almost like this phenomenon that you can, this is something that has more mainstream articles and stuff about it. But this idea of like people online being anonymous and just like saying a bunch of crap, right? Like just you go online and the standards of civility are lessened, at least in a lot of places, right? It's especially like where we're looking now on Twitter. There's a lot of profanity, a lot of fu, a lot of like just generally being mean to people, harassing people, sometimes doxing people. But it's like you behave in ways that
A lot of "you're racist, get off the phone."
that's right. You behave in ways that you wouldn't normally behave in like regular society.
Mhm.
And so you could argue this is sort of an iteration of the same thing. That it's just like, well, I'm somewhat divorced from the consequences of just living in a place where, there's natural social consequences to sexual acts, where like people talk and people think a certain way about you and blah blah. Um, it's just sort of like, well, I'm just going to put this out there because I feel like it, and nobody's going to.
Well, it's a gradual downhill thing. Like, this overly sexual stuff is glorified instead of shamed or looked askance at.
Mhm.
Like, somebody was going on about this Ariana Grande video that's like got all these sexual stuff in it, and I assume that's some like new hot music video, and so this is like the goal that people see it as, and so OnlyFans is now like, it used to be like, hey, I'm a homemaker and I have a great family and a husband who earns decent money and loves me. Now it's like, I have an OnlyFans account with 100,000 followers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen. I think it basically sucks, but I guess I don't know. It feels insufficient and kind of impotent to me to just sort of say that it sucks, or like I want there to be more concrete explanations, because I feel like yeah, it sucks. I know it sucks.
Well, it's without
Like, what are we gonna do
meaning to a
about it?
large degree.
What are we gonna do?
It's like, well, you go for the lesser over the higher. You go for the quick, easy way. It's like when Luke asked Yoda, is the dark side more powerful? More powerful. No. Quicker, easier, more seductive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, my easy fix, because a lot of people don't want to have to work on themselves, like psychologically.
Oh no.
And so it's easy. Well, I just show off my body, get a bunch of money, instead of like, oh, I have to work at a job and then deal with other people who are annoying and maybe have to question how annoying I'm being to them, and work on getting a degree or learning skills and all this other stuff, which would arguably be more meaningful. Or you could just show off your tits and ass and just get a bunch of money.
You can show off your tits and ass and use that to finance a gratifying lifestyle, right?
I don't know. I wonder though.
Things.
I mean, anything's possible, but I feel like having that at the heart of it is somehow makes it less meaningful or diminishes it in some way.
It's such a primary aspect of our
Like if you consciously do it with that in mind, I think there's something off there. But if you did that and then you realize this isn't the way to go, but you have this money and haven't spent it all, and then you put it towards something else.
Just be dissociative about it.
Well, but it's not dissociative. Like,
Yeah.
like honest, like making an honest mistake, realizing it was wrong, and then taking what you've learned from the mistake or gained from doing that and putting it towards something better.
No, I guess you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? So, I put out this idea, right? So it's like you got.
Oh, hold on. Let me just add this analogy. So you decide to become a pirate, right?
A
You're gonna
pirate.
steal all this money,
Oh yeah.
and then you're gonna help out orphans with it, right?
Yep.
Like this is what you decide. Now this is amoral. Now, in the second scenario, this person's a pirate and they have all this loot, and then they realize, boy, I did some bad things. Well, I guess I should, spend the rest of my life helping out the poor, helping out these orphans.
Mhm.
You see the difference there?
Yeah, no, I sure do. Um,
Sorry, I cut you off.
yeah, well, so yeah, that's an important distinction. But I guess like so I put out this idea, right, that OnlyFans is comparable to Twitter trolling or being an asshole on social media. Because you're just letting loose with no regard for like social censure, with no regard for what people are going to think about you, right? Um, and I liken that to, I don't know, this whole like I feel like there's a lot of this, the appeal of the sort of the idea of I want to be careful how I put it because these words are so loaded. I mean, you could say globalism, you could say this idea of like the global community, like I'm a global citizen kind of thing, you know what I mean? Um, and uh, the associated ideologies, the associated symbology, it's sort of like, you know, this idea that we need to be beyond like basic tribalisms and the nation state and the family and things like this and we should be global citizens, and that entails like you know a, a level of deference to different lifestyles and things and alternative lifestyles and various sort of whether it's minority groups or what, just this idea that like we're beyond that old stuff, right? We should just basically cut that off and become citizens of the world, and we show this by embracing that which may have at one time been considered marginal, in the spirit of freedom and people being accepted for who they are and doing what they want, kind of thing. You get where I'm going with that in general, or you get the idea I'm outlining.
I think so.
And I think like this idea of being a global citizen as it currently exists, and I think like it's probably riding a current that is real and just to some extent. Like I think there is a gradual but definite process going on in the direction of globalization of culture and whatnot. But I think a lot of time the way it ends up manifesting is just like, well, let's eliminate these groups like family, tribe, whatever, that you could reasonably be expected to be held socially accountable to, and replace it with this thing which is as yet kind of hypothetical fiction, right? So
Well, this is the problem with it, though, is that it shoots too high. It's like this sort of I don't know, globalism or one world and all this sort of stuff. I feel like in a lot of ways, not every way, but in a lot of ways, is too far above where people actually are,
oh yeah.
or where nations actually are. Now there is something to it, and there is something real right now with thinking of yourself as a world citizen, whatever. You don't want to think about like, oh, my country first, then screw the rest of the world, and let's take economic or political advantage of everybody else. Um, so there's some real aspects of that, but this idea that we're just superseding the family and all these smaller groups and nations, it's like, well, no, we're not there at all.
So my point is though that's okay. This is the Twitter consciousness. This is the OnlyFans consciousness.
But the point I was going to make though is that since it's shooting for this thing that's too far to be totally real,
Mhm.
except in certain ways, well, what fills that in? You know, Anything could theoretically fill that in, as long as it's not this. So you can have the OnlyFans come in here, and it's, perhaps in the name of multiculturalism, like I think you were saying, it's like, well, we can't judge anybody's culture, because that's, nationalistic or tribal.
Right. But I mean, and there is like a very there are many cultural norms which people like this have to follow, right? But it's like that sense of social accountability for things beyond sort of paying deference to the the various idols, of that movement, to like, having the right opinions on things and saying the right words, right? If you go through that whole ritual, then it's like, well, I've been successfully detached from these groups that would apply any kind of consistent social scrutiny to my behavior. And so I can just sort of live in this personal atomized vacuum, and like, well, my sexuality is my sexuality, and my, whatever I do is just me, and it doesn't matter, and who cares?
Yeah, you can exist in this sort of no man's land because between what might be the future of this more interconnected world that puts more attention on the good of the whole, and then the traditional sort of my tribe believes this stuff, which is often exaggerated, I think.
Hmm.
And like, we're not in one place or the other.
Well, it's like the tribe isn't there, right? Like the whole idea would be for the tribe to grow. Like it would just be a bigger tribe. It wouldn't be like, oh, there's nothing now. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, not to say it would be exactly the same, only bigger, but there would still be group dynamics. There would still be, and group dynamics as they evolve tend to lead towards, specific rules and specific stigma and specific limitations on behavior. Right. But yeah, I don't know. We've probably got. The point I was making was that it's interesting that you can see in this. So this phenomenon of being an a-hole on Twitter, of showing your a-hole on OnlyFans, it's all sort of like, it's a similar thing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a similar sort of thing where this impulse to, be the right kind of person or do the right kind of thing to avoid social censure kind of goes out the window, and there's this sort of superficial codified system of rules that you sort of pay deference to in order to, be a part of the global entity, which is detached from localized social scrutiny, which is detached from, localized social scrutiny where there's actual sort of emergent rules and
Well, see, the thing is, you have to have all these structures in place down to the bottom level of a thing. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at yourself as the world, the DNA is like the smallest level. It's like, and everything shares the DNA. There's a certain code of behavior, even if, people have different functions and all that sort of thing. But it's all shared. And this sort of one world order or global citizen thing, it's not clearly wrought out. It's, it's got all these holes in it, and there's some nebulous ideals connected with it. And yeah, it's like, if we all like look at America or the U.S., and I guess it was more true in the past, but there were certain ideals and principles that Americans had in common, and now that's a lot less so, it seems. But it's like you could be, a person from the other part of the world, but now you're an American because we have a certain culture and certain ideals and principles that we all believe in or are supposed to believe. But you could have all sorts of diversity within that, but there's this bedrock that was there largely that allowed for that larger thing to be built upon.
Well, it's structural integrity, but structural integrity means that your actions reverberate and are therefore seen and judged, right? In terms of the structure, in terms of maintaining that structural.
Yeah. Yeah, you judge, well, this is un-American or whatever.
Which is good, which is needed. I mean, obviously there have been terrible excesses, in the name of that, but
yeah,
something like that.
Mind.
Anyway, what do you say we get back to this argument?
Yeah, I'm eager actually to get to
This is
the second Twitter thread. So let's keep going.
Okay, so let's see. So okay, so they're talking about OnlyFans. OnlyFans equals not getting abused. LOL. Yes, Han. And so the last thing he said was, yeah, this is your worldview, that human intimacy is impossible / dangerous, which means which makes you an ideal propagandist for something like OnlyFans, which repackages your alienation as empowerment. Wow, when did I say that? And Yerk says, your narrative is that men prostituted women for thousands of years, etc., and then women started prostituting themselves, and that this is good. And let me just bring up the rest of it. Yes, that women have finally started to gain control over our bodies. Yes, that is a good thing, Boo Boo. Men have been able to use their bodily autonomy to earn money forever. Women deserve to be able to as well. Okay, there's a point. There's a bookmark. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Right.
Well, we can keep going because there's it'll get to.
Yeah, let's keep going.
So he replies, yep, that's totally what's happening. No way you've been sold a narrative that allows you to repackage your own commodification as empowerment. And she says, let me know when you get around to the military's commodities. The military's commodities. So that's an interesting point, right? She's saying that like men are commodified for their strength, I guess, as soldiers, right? I mean, they're made to.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously true that you're commodified as a soldier, and it's more objectified. Like, oh, men just want to go off and die. It's not like society where powerful people have sort of molded that as
Yeah.
the thing. And you're gonna be a hero to fight for my cause and die.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, it happened like men's agency was also limited in the name of structural integrity. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know this, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
but the soldier thing, that's a really bad argument on her part, because like using your body to earn money with like, I mean, there's sort of honor in being a soldier, and it's like selfless. Like you're dying for your country, ostensibly selfless anyway. But like being on OnlyFans or a prostitute or something, it's like, well, you're just getting stuff for you. I guess you're providing a service to somebody, but you're not like throwing your life away so others can ostensibly be free.
yeah, well, and I mean this thing of men being objectified for their physicality, right? Their physical strength, let's say. It's like, well, yeah, this whole notion that she's using to argue her point of like abuse, right? I mean, it occurred to me reading this that it's this form of negative objectification, right? That like you are this irreducible thing. You are the threat of abuse because you are stronger, because you have, these muscles. It's like if I see a woman as a sex object because she has breasts or whatever, it's like, oh, this is what you are, right? There's this threat of abuse because you are stronger than me, and that sort of informs every interaction, and that justifies my being just being generally cold to you. And B, just like in terms of, I don't know, like we talk about seduction, like in terms of relationships, just be, not really coming to the table and having an excuse to sort of demur in a way, right? To defer and demur. And yeah, it's this kind of weird, ghastly way of being demure, right? Like I don't, you have to prove to me that a relationship isn't just the prospect of abuse because you have muscles. It's this kind of objectification of men in a negative way. I don't know. Does that make any sense? I mean, I feel like, because I know that what I'm saying has sense in it, but I feel like the way I said it may have been a bit of a head scratcher. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
it's just like men are objectified for their strength, and one negative um, aspect of that, and I think we're objectified for other stuff too. But it's like one negative aspect of that is that a man simply because he has larger muscle mass, larger muscles, is sort of like this becomes a reason to.
I think, and again, I'm tired, so I'm not thinking as clearly, but I think what she's doing is sort of like what she said about women. Women are like forced to be prostitutes, or have been, essentially. But she's not looking at men as being forced to be like beasts of burden.
Well, this is kind of part of where I'm going. Yeah, I mean, I don't finish your point if you have more.
Yeah, well, it's like there's a good side and a bad side to something, to like all things, and she's like focusing on the bad side on one thing and the good side on another thing, and comparing that instead of comparing both.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like the fact that a man could abuse you could be a reason to just like be more invested in trying to have a good relationship with a good person, and being keen and selective about finding the right person who isn't like that. But instead it's almost the opposite. It's a reason to not do that. But yeah, it's sort of like yeah, so in that scenario, right, I'm guessing when she said prostitution earlier, she was at least she was including marriage as it existed in the past, right? That this
Yeah,
was.
I thought that was basically what she was saying.
Yeah, but yeah, as we say, like men who are supposed to be the ones with the power in this situation, they're like doing backbreaking labor in most cases, right? They're tilling fields and laying pipe and whatever the hell else, and they're doing this all day, and it's like, well, yeah, their bodies are being objectified too, their bodies are being commodified too, and now it's like with the OnlyFans thing, it's sort of, yeah, on the one hand is being abused by men, and on the other hand is collecting the fruits of their labor. It's like these two forms of sort of objectifying the male as a body, sort of.
Yeah, and then look at how women are protected while at the same time being sort of kept in a box to some degree.
How do you mean?
Cared for, protected, provided for. I mean, there's like a good and a bad side to both roles.
Yeah. But you see what I'm saying? It's like, to relate to you is primarily defined by the prospect of abuse because you're bigger than me.
Well, if that's what you're choosing to focus on.
And the other side of that is, well, I'm just going to collect, the fruits of your labor as a big laboring body. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of like the whole mindset there is one of objectification, which you would expect of somebody who basically is committed to objectifying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. But enough. I don't know. I feel tired of trying to make points. I want to I want this to get a little more lighthearted. Don't you agree?
More what?
Lighthearted.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like this first thread that much. I think the second thread is much more interesting.
Oh yeah, you don't like the thread at all?
The other one has more to say. This is sort of picking apart people arguing with each other.
Yeah, but you gotta walk through the darkness to get to the light. Okay, so all right, fair enough. Let's go through it faster then, because I'm tired of making arguments anyway. So okay, she says, "Let me know when you get around to the military's commodities." And he says, "It's bad, LOL. Why do you keep trying this tactic?" And she says, "Because you keep failing to see your own blind spots, still having trouble." You're hoping they're blind spots because if you can prove that I'm hypocritical, it will deflate what I've said about OnlyFans. But what I've said would still be true even if I'm a hypocritical or bad person for pointing it out. Yeah. I'm not trying to prove anything about you, boo boo. We're talking and you're refusing to see any other perspective than yours. Okay, your perspective is that OnlyFans is empowering. Who cares about men's feelings? I disagree. Don't think I said that, boo boo. You're putting all the blame on any woman on OF when, again, adults can spend their money however they want. So, yeah, I mean, this is, you following this?
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically, you know, in a sense, just bickering, but it's interesting. He says, I don't blame women, LOL. And she says, how did you start this thread? Something about female seduction and facts aren't feelings, remember? No one else is responsible for you but you. And this is, we're getting towards the end now. This is I'm just a couple more posts from him in response, and I kind of cut off the rest of the argument. But yeah, he says, you saw the phrase female seduction and your broken brain immediately assumed I was quote unquote accusing women of seduction, even though that is almost the precise opposite of the point I was making, LOL. You saw I don't believe in facts over feelings or conservative fetishization of individual responsibility. You do believe in those things though, and you're obsessed with provoking the hypocrisy of others in order to justify them. It's up to you whether you believe it's okay to commodify human beings and be an absolute predatory individualist. But don't try to pawn off your own resultant alienation as deriving from other people's refusal to validate your totally awesome personal choices. Owned, question mark?
Yeah, I think there's doing some talking past each other. But yeah, this idea of reducing yourself to a sort of commodity is not a good position.
Well, it's I mean, like the word objectifying, it doesn't consider the dynamism of sex and the individual, right? It's like, oh, I can just do this sex stuff and then it just goes into the void or something. It's not a part of me. It's not in my consciousness. It's not a part of my nervous system now. You know what I mean? It's like this huge thing that's this huge has all this bearing in your consciousness. It's just like, oh no, I mean, when I feel like saying it means nothing, it means nothing.
Mm.
Anyway, so you're tired of that one?
I was tired of that one for a while.
You want to get away from that one? Okay, I understand. Yeah, I almost wasn't going to do the second one because it's, but I like the idea of
The second one's so much better, so much more interesting.
and I like the idea of doing a long video, a long hang, doing a long hang, and not on OnlyFans.
You gotta break this up into small videos like Timcast IRL. Like Democrats panic as tweet thread is read.
We do clips, if there's any entertaining parts whatsoever, I could clip them.
All right, the good one.
Oh, you're ready for the good one? You want to go right into it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me bring it up here.
You should probably read a bunch of it, or I don't know. Yeah. Like I wouldn't just take it one thing at a time. It might be good to do several of her posts at a time.
Yeah. No. I mean that was more. I did that because there was a whole argument with multiple threads going, but So this is a thread, I believe, I don't have the first, there was sort of like a title tweet. I believe it was called How to Save Western Women or something rather dramatic like this. So let me just launch right into it. I'll do the first few and then we'll talk about it. And of course, related to that, the dreaded previous thread in whatever ways you find appropriate. So this is from Twitter user Curious Lamb, at lamb_bites with a Y, BYTES. The perfect package. A common complaint amongst men is that high-value women are hard to find. A high-value woman is defined as a woman with strong morals and values that doesn't lead a promiscuous lifestyle and is in touch with her femininity. What men need to understand is that once a woman enters her 20s, she's likely to have already made a series of mistakes or missteps that she may regret. She may also have had her heart broken and has an emotional wall. The perfect package doesn't exist. High-value women aren't born, they're cultivated. Instead of looking for something that doesn't exist, men need to look for a woman that has a strong baseline for becoming high value. This means looking at her past, her decision making, her values, and the vision she sees for herself in life to determine if she's worth your investment. Okay, what do you think of this so far? I mean, you're the one who's
I
hot on
think it's very interesting.
it.
It's similar to somewhat what Paul Elam said about don't look for perfect, look for trainable.
Right. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, I think she makes some cogent points here. That in today's world, a lot of women, because there's not a sort of more solid moral, religious upbringing, a lot of women, do all sorts of, kind of crazy party stuff and spoil their value as wife material to
Well,
some
and then
extent.
there's, in a lot of cases, unfortunately, there's an investment in believing that it doesn't mean anything, right? Because it's easier to believe that it's all, just meaning.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
when they enter their 20s, it's like, yeah, it's unlikely they're just going to turn around as soon as they're 20 and be like, oh, that stuff I did as a teenager is now wrong. So it's more likely, 30s or something, or later 20s that somebody might turn around and be like, oh, this stuff isn't so good.
But it's interesting. You have to kind of look at somebody who's, as of course women do too. You have to look at somebody who's imperfect and decide like what's the potential.
Yeah, does this person really have potential here? And
Even if
it's like,
as
is it a tragedy or a comedy? And you know what that means in the classical sense? I guess,
when
yeah. A tragedy is where a play or a story where the characters are overcome by their
I
faults.
realize it's a
And a
comedy.
comedy is not, ha ha funny. It's a play or a theatrical show or a story where the characters overcome their faults in the end.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what you're looking for. Is this person like smaller than their issues, or is this person going to be able to rise above them?
Indeed. So even Joshua, if they have an OnlyFans or have had one,
Jeez. That's a really big red flag.
what if it's in the past? I mean, not that they have one now, but when they were young, well, OnlyFans was a thing, and you make money off it. It's easy.
Well, here's the real question, Nick. The real question is, if they tell you they had an OnlyFans, or they keep it a secret and you find out down the line, because that's even worse.
Right.
You could forgive somebody for making a mistake, but if they're being honest with you now and they actually, say why they realized it was wrong, it's like, well, yeah, I can work with that. I mean, it's still like a slap in your face. It's like, oh, all these men have seen you naked. Well, there's no specialness for me seeing you naked now, to some extent, right?
You gotta
You
have.
can't put that genie back in the bottle.
So it's special. Yeah.
What's that?
I said you have to have her body surgically altered so that it's special again.
God.
You've seen this body.
But yeah, it's like you can't put that back in some of those things back in the bottle. Person might still be valuable enough, taking that in consideration to partner up with, but possibly. But you can't get that one aspect of it back.
Yep. But yeah, I do like, I like the idea of redemption, forgiveness, not like, it's not about everything is fine, and it's not about having to be super judgmental. It's like, what can I do with this?
Yeah.
maybe there's enough here. Because we're imperfect people, and that's okay. All right, so I'll do the next
let's do
question.
it. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so where we are today, feminism/religion. Women are followers innately. If we do not have a strong male leader in our lives, father, brother, husband, etc., we will seek out a path that will promise us safety. Ideologies will serve as a substitute for a strong man if a woman doesn't have one. We see this play out in women who are feminists or have become highly religious. I'm of the belief that the women with a higher baseline for becoming high value fall into the religious category, as they have recognized that immoral behavior leads to their own mental destruction. They've taken actionable steps to place themselves on a path of integrity. That doesn't mean these women don't have a past, haven't made mistakes, and carry no baggage. This means as a man, you have to decide if you should invest in cultivating her to become the high value woman you ultimately want to loyally commit to. Okay, so a bit of a callback there at the end, but so what do you think of this?
Fallback?
Well, I mean, that last tweet was kind of a similar thing to what she was saying before, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so what do you think of this idea? So women are, first of all, controversial. Women are followers innately.
I think,
She's bucking the trend saying that.
well, I think that's true, generally speaking. Um, there's an innate, what would you call it? Yeah, some innate programming urge trend towards following instead of leading.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and evolutionarily, women were helpless, especially, they would become pregnant and they'd be really helpless. And there's sort of this tendency, I think, to look for something solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she says that, and she says, that this ideologies will be a substitute for a strong man if they don't have one, and
That's another interesting point. She
yeah.
makes several interesting points here, and I know that they're all 100% right, but that is interesting and it does make sense.
Yeah. Well,
Though not stoic ideologies, I would say.
perhaps not, but
You know what I mean? Like stoicism, I think it would less likely to fill that role, something like
but
that.
that makes
Things
sense.
that have a community and other stuff around them, it would be more likely.
It also makes sense if you're with what we're saying from the evolutionary perspective, right? Because if you're looking for something solid to lean on outside of yourself, because that's part of your evolutionary nature, Stoicism is making you the solid object, right? Stoicism is about you being that. So that's not what you would be looking for.
There's probably some stoic women out there, though.
Oh, I'm sure, and I'd love to meet them, but
I love to meet them, but they don't need you, Nick. They're not looking for anybody, so
they don't need me. They can have, they can, we can talk philosophy, and they can gain from the experience. But I think what was I just saying? Yeah, so it's interesting. Like, so this idea of evolution leading to this and then manifesting in ideology or a sort of I guess this is what she's describing is almost a dependent relationship on an ideology, right? Or I mean, you could call it a kind of symbiosis, but it's there's a dependent aspect to that. And it's like, well, these ideas are, in a sense, they come from this feedback with physical reality and with an expectation that as the more fragile and helpless, physically helpless person, that I will require something, solid to protect me, to lean on. And you can kind of see like this in feminism itself, right? There's these constant allusions to, threats, like threats in the environment and the fragility of women, right? Like there's,
I don't know. It depends what version of feminism you're talking about.
well, I mean,
It's all over the place. Women are just as strong as men in some version of feminism, and then another version
no,
they're
that's
super
that's
weak
the
and need to
same
be
that's the
protected.
same version. That's the same version. I'm not saying that feminism outright says like women are weak, you have to protect us, but that's sort of, it's woven into the fabric in a sense, right? Like it's all about like there are these constant threats to women, right? It's written from an eye, from a perspective of vulnerability.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to say what feminism is exactly because
I mean, I
it's
think
all
there
over
are
the
pretty
place.
distinct overriding trends, right? Like there's,
Except the trends seem to override other trends.
I think most of the modern incarnation of feminism, there is this, it's not written from the perspective of I am weak. It's written from the perspective of I am strong. But a lot of what's being given attention, a lot of what's being talked about is that there are these threats in the environment to women, which must be ever guarded against, kind of thing.
Yeah, which is sort of an admission of weakness, right? Because supposedly they're not threats to men.
Right, but I'm saying this could be seen as a manifestation of this, right? Of this evolutionary thing of like, the same thing which would make me rely on a man is making me lean on this ideology, philosophy, political lens, whatever. And a lot of the same stuff, right? A lot of those tendencies are sort of bleeding into it, or are sort of, you know what I mean? Because that's the part of the consciousness that's being buffeted by these ideologies. That's some of what you're seeing as a manifestation of that consciousness. Does it make sense?
I'm not sure. I didn't really follow it.
Okay, I'll just hope that people at home followed it because I don't feel like repeating it.
I hope so too.
But anyway, that's the thing. Let me read the next set. I've got these screenshotted. I'm not even scrolling through Twitter. These are actually, full disclosure, these threads are kind of old. I was going to do a stream about them a while ago and kind of put it off. But I think they're highly relevant. They're highly relevant. These are immutable, eternal truths. Okay, let's read the next batch. Assuming responsibility to have authority. In order to have authority, you must first assume responsibility and prove you're competent in your responsibilities by exhibiting desirable outcomes. This mindset serves well in business, but also in relationships. By taking ownership of your woman's well-being, guiding her on a quality life path, and showing her how to behave that serves her best interests, you gain her trust. Once you have her trust, you must now challenge her. Growth is painful, and this is where your leadership skills will be tested. You teach her how to be high value by leveraging her past poor choices against her. A woman must understand the precise missteps she took and see their consequences before the catalyst is formed to change. She will push back on this. This will elicit negative emotions from her. But the biggest growth we experience comes when we've been mentally knocked off our high horse, where we think we know best, shown a better way, and built back up stronger than before. So what do you think of this?
By the way, I just want to say, like, her writing style and what she says, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Like in the last set of threads you wrote, what did she say? Like, I'm of the belief that, and it's like sort of humble and clear. It's like, this is what she thinks. It's not being put out there as, oh, this is true, obviously, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
It's very, very cogent. Well, but and this is where, for me anyway, it goes off the rails somewhat, though it's still very interesting, and sort of the principles are worth considering and maybe even employing. But it's all about the responsibilities all on you. You, like, women don't have agency. They need to be just led around and stuff. And, like, look, if you want to have a relationship where you're leading your woman through everything. And, I'm not talking against being a leader at all, but if like you have to like mold your woman into the person she's supposed to be, like somewhat sure, but if you're like setting the tone for the whole thing and you're like the one orchestrating the whole relationship, there's something about it to me that's like, I don't know, I want to be loved, not like somebody's teacher who's like just living out what I've shown them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think to an extent, it's like you have to take initiative to help make somebody, um, able to consistently do that.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially in today's culture, that's not how people are trained. That's not how people are raised. And, it may be, and, maybe there's some equivalent for women too, but it may well be that in order to find a suitable mate who can do that, you might have to go through this process first of sort of showing them some things, of showing them, the error of certain ideas they've internalized, certain behaviors or whatever.
Yeah, I think what she sets up is sound if you want to use this tactic with people
Mhm.
of like, and it was very. I mean, you know I wondered if this was actually a woman, and I guess you don't know for sure, but it does sound like it's probably a woman writing this stuff. But this thing about guiding her to a quality life path and showing her how to behave that serves her best interests
Mhm.
will gain you her trust. This is very insightful. And then when you have her trust, now you can challenge her to, it's like 40 chess here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. But the one good thing that I think sort of saves it is that you're focused on not who she is. This is the problem with men simping for women and sort of white knight gynocentric attitudes. It's like you're seeing women as innately valuable as they are. But what she's saying here, I think she actually says it later, but is like you're focusing always on who they could be, right? Not who they are. So it's not a free pass to, oh, you're just valuable as tits and ass, or oh, you're just valuable however you are. It's I'm putting in all this effort because I see you as potentially valuable as this moral virtuous person. And so I'm helping you get there. But you're always focused on there. So it doesn't become, oh, you just be however you want and I'll sort of indulge and infantilize you. So I think that's the saving grace of what she's saying here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, seeing potential in people is the essence of a committed relationship, right? The whole idea of having
Good quote.
a committed relationship is that you see some kind of energy that's going somewhere. You see the possibility of actually growing together. Um, and if you can't see somebody as potential, if you just see them as an object, whether it's sex or status or whatever, there's no relationship to be had. It's just like, I'm attaching myself to you because you are the good thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but there has to. I mean, I come back to this. There's got to be something more than you like playing it just right to lead her becoming a more moral and virtuous person. Like she's got to be bringing something to the relationship that's real and significant enough for any kind of
yeah,
leadership.
but it's like it's the getting there, right? Like she is bringing it. It's just that if you don't do this, it's not going to work out, right? But
There's something about it though that it's like too much effort to play it perfectly to get her there.
well, yeah, play it perfect. I don't know if she's saying like if you have to play it so perfectly, it may be that it's not the best anyway, right? But
Yeah,
if like it depends how you read this. If you read this as a
yeah. I guess
precise instruction manual, then yeah, like okay, you have to do exactly this, this, and this, and yeah, I mean, obviously she should have some agency and responsibility, but the general principle of like you kind of have to train people in modern culture, and maybe especially women in modern culture, to be in such a way that they can, you know, bring what it is that they do bring to a relationship. consistently, at least. Not that they have nothing and you force them to like have something, but like, that they can consistently be that way, and that it won't be messed up by some kind of erroneous behavior. Um,
I
yeah,
guess one thing that's a good sign is women actually asking you stuff
yeah,
versus you having to like guide them or like, you know, maneuver them to this sort of thing. And it's like if they're asked, what do you think about this and that, then it goes someplace. And that's sort of an initiative on their part, which is a good sign.
right, right. Yeah, indeed. Should I do the next one?
Okay,
Sure.
let's keep going.
Okay, you must maintain your integrity. Integrity, doing what is right for her, even at the expense of the relationship, is paramount. Wielding negative emotions solely to gain power for yourself is abuse. Wielding negative emotions to empower her is leading her on a better path. This will create conflict, but this is how boundaries and expectations are established that you must adhere to. She must understand that you have high expectations because she has high potential. If she trusts you, this negative experience of facing her own poor choices can actually bond her to you if she trusts you to lead her on a good path. So that's a bunch. What do you think about that?
I wonder what she's actually saying with this integrity. You must do what's right for her, even at the expense of the relationship. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I guess part of like if I'm charitable there, or if you look at it in the right way, it's sort of like, if you do what's right for her and it kills the relationship, that's sort of the test of the relationship, right? Like it.
But it sort of goes past a certain line. Like if you're simping for her, it really is how you look at it.
Well, because in this specific, I mean, I'm not saying I totally agree. Like there are interpretations where, yeah, it's sort of like, why are you so gung ho about focusing your attention on helping her? Like, she's, I don't know, her job is just sort of to be this project that you work on, or, like you
Yeah,
have to
I
pick up
think
all the pieces.
something about this sort of smacks of like overly investing in the woman in this
Maybe,
in
yeah,
this way.
maybe.
I mean, I can get what she's saying, and there's certain people this might work with, but
Well, it's like, so it's consistency, right? Like she says, she must understand that you have high expectations because she has high potential. So it's like, yeah, if you,
yeah, and that's good to have that clearly laid out.
but it's holding her to the idea that she values herself, right? It's like, well, yeah, if you're, I agree that you're awesome, you're good. But that's why this and that, this why I think this,
That you have the potential for it at least. And
right.
again, that's if you're holding somebody to some higher standard and seeing them as better, and but this doesn't even work in all cases. That's the thing, and you definitely have
But
to.
I don't think it's supposed to. I think, like she said, this is about choosing. I know I'm simping for her right now. I'm just trying to like lay out, the other side. It's like, you choose a woman who you think it might be worth it to do this with.
Yeah,
And obviously at any point it's your prerogative to say, what, it's not working out. At least that's how I read it. But
I don't know. There's got to be more judgment in here.
uh-huh.
Like this whole thing is being so invested in the woman,
Mhm.
that it sort of blinds you to if she's not living up to it.
Mm,
If you're focused on what she could be, and living in that too much, then if she's not doing it, you might miss that.
well, there's definitely a balance to find there. I mean, that's sort of like the other side of, what might be sort of the modern problem is that, like I said, right, seeing seeing potential in the other person is sort of the foundation of a relationship. It's the whole basis of having a relationship.
Yeah,
And a lot of the stuff today is very transactional, very objectifying, very sort of like, use this or use that, use rich as use poor, use good as use bad. And it's not really like, but you can go too far to the other side where it's like, I'm just so obsessed with this idea of who he or she could be that I'm just, riding it out, even though things really are pretty bad.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that's a good point. You do have to figure out a way to find balance amongst those things.
And this thing about her trusting you, again, there's lots of good points here. But if she trusts you, then this negative experience of her facing her own poor choices can actually bond her to you if she trusts you to lead her on a good path. It's like she sort of almost abandoned her agency. The
Mhm.
only thing is like, oh, this person is a good experience, or this person, like, I can trust because he's going to do the right thing.
I
It,
guess
it
it's like, yeah,
almost like sort of abandons her own choice making capacity. It's like you have to show her the problem with her past
I
experience.
know, yeah. It's bleak in a sense because, yeah, what she's describing is basically deprogramming in a sense, right? It's like you've been made into this, you've been trained in a way that is not totally in keeping with being a regular human in a relationship, exhibiting pro-social behavior. And yeah, to an extent, she is describing a deprogramming from that, right? She's describing like you're acting on somebody in a way to make them realize their own ability to act more or their own responsibility for things. And yeah, to an extent that, well, it's bleak because it's sort of like it's reflective of a bleak situation, right? Like the fact that this would be necessary in a lot of cases, or even like something you'd think about in a lot of cases, that's sort of indicative of a bleak
Her
situation.
potential seems to not be able to deal with her own issues, right? Like,
Okay.
I guess there's a sort of an aspiration to being a better person, but this all seems to be like you have to play it like just right to get her to see these things.
Yeah, no, I mean, it it could well turn out that way in a lot of cases, and like this is just like I look at this as like, I don't know, something of a, it's more philosophy than science. It's like, this what
And this is the problem. This is like a higher turn of the spiral to women like getting free dinners from you if you're paying for it. You go on a date, you pay for dinner, and then they don't want to see you again, right? What have you gotten out of it, right?
Mhm.
So this is a higher turn of the spiral there. Like you have a relationship where it's you investing your time and effort to work on this person psychologically, right? And
Right.
then if they decide at a certain point, oh, I don't want to go anymore, you've expended all this effort into this person, and then what
Yeah.
do you get back in return?
No, I understand. I understand. I mean, it's
No,
like,
no, I'm not saying you don't understand, but I just want to make this point.
yeah.
And it's like you're almost training them not to be responsible,
Okay.
because they're, not like everything has to be like nickeled and dimed, but as you go forward in a relationship, it's not just me giving, and then 5 months into it, okay, maybe you can give something back.
Well,
It's like there has to be some kind of parity there.
I get that, but is that necessarily what's implied here? Like I get that you're
Maybe
taking
her actual
it,
opinion is different, but that seems to be what I'm reading.
maybe. I mean,
Because
it's
it's
true
you
that
set the boundaries, you do this, get her to trust you so that then you can leverage your past experiences to make her better.
I mean, there must be something about her, right? Like, why are you with her and trying to be in a relationship to begin with? Like, you must be getting something out of, unless, I don't know. I mean,
The thing, she sort of glosses over this about wielding negative emotions.
uh
See, you're not wielding negative emotions um, in pointing out her past faults and what went wrong there. It's negative emotions will come up from it, but you're wielding thought to point out certain things.
well, I don't know if she's saying that or if she's saying that you should express negative emotion. I don't know.
Well, I think she's saying, using these past experiences is wielding negative
Right.
emotions.
Well, I mean, you're consciously evoking negative emotions because it serves a certain purpose, right? Because
But
it's
wielding it means that you're actually using the negative emotions.
but it's
Not,
not
not that
like you're in
negative
a.
emotions arise
I know, but
subsequent to what you're doing.
you're in a relationship with this where you can't just act like, oh well, I just say things and I don't know that. Like, I mean,
No, you know it
Just
comes from
because,
it, but you're not wielding. You're wielding mental. You're wielding thoughts
no, but
and emotions. The runoff from that
you're
versus
molding her.
you
You're molding
trying to
her
wield the
emotions.
emotions directly.
You're molding her emotions because like she reacts that way because she's in a certain way, and you're trying to get her to not be a certain way. And you're saying something that causes an emotional conflict, which will hopefully cause her to, her emotions to change, or for her to change.
Yeah, I think this is another problem.
But
It
it's
has
it's
to be
it's
deeper, like her changing herself. Like if she, somebody, oh, I'm just going to change myself because I trust you. It's like there's really got to be something more internal there. Like you can sort of show people stuff, and if they're ready, they'll see it. But it's got to be within you that you want to change, and no amount of somebody like guiding you the right.
without a doubt. But like you have to gauge that. Like, okay, she's involved in this process with you, where
Yeah.
you're basically, leading her on a path that represents change from her former self.
Hmm.
So you have to gauge along the way, like, is this something she's really invested in? Is she seeing this correctly? Is she honest? And yeah, I mean, there's always a risk it's not going to be totally fair or good.
Yeah, I think
But
there needs to
it's like
be.
the fact that you're here is sort of,
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to do some process similar to this or in this ballpark, I think reciprocity needs to happen.
of course. Well, of course you need to. I'm not saying like,
If it's not there, then I don't know how far you can or should go with
well, for
this.
the record, I'm not saying, and yeah, I'm not saying potential should just replace sexuality as like the reason to simp for women. It's like, yeah, I'm not saying like, oh, you should just do this because you have the idea that this will lead to something, but you're actually not getting much of anything out of the relationship, right? I'm just saying it in a very broad sense, right? Like this isn't necessarily a bad.
You have to see that potential as something you expect right now. Your video's off.
Yeah, just give me a second.
Yeah, you got to see her potential as like I need to see some amount of this right now. Like give me my due in a relationship. It's not all about you. Yeah, so that thing about like putting her first at the expense of the relationship is like, no, you're an adult.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, again, that's like one of these. I don't totally get how to read that in this
Yeah,
context.
well, maybe she meant something we don't quite
So
understand.
yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep simping for her because it feels right. Uh, but anyway, you want to read the
Yeah,
rest
let's
of
go to the next.
it? Okay, the next one here. Loyalty. Loyalty. Once you've established a bond, you must continue to wield her positive and negative emotions. Airbender. Women are loyal to emotions. If you want loyalty from a woman, affecting her emotionally is how you achieve it. Relationships stagnate when they get too comfortable. Okay, this is where I guess I'll keep reading, but this I'm starting to come around to your view on it with that statement. But oh gosh, what happened?
Yeah, see, you're. This is the whole problem. Women are loyal to emotions. Um,
Right, you've got to go through that. You're never actually engaged in a relationship with her where
yeah,
she's
you're manipulating her.
doing
Basically.
what makes sense. It's like, yeah,
She's loyal to this thing
manipulate or
that's
manipulate.
not rational or reasonable, and you have to play at that because you're accepting this is the level she's on. She's not on the level where she can control her emotions, where she can have values, where she can care about people enough to get herself under control. It's this is the level she's on. You're accepting at one point that she's a child and
Mhm.
using her childishness to try to make her an adult. When I think, yeah, it fundamentally falls apart.
Yeah, so women are loyal to emotions. If you want loyalty from a woman, affecting her emotionally is how you achieve it. Relationships stagnate when they get too comfortable.
I mean, these are like good points. They're insightful about women. I think.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
But if, well, okay. Once you've established competency in your responsibilities, have earned her implicit trust in that you look out for your collective best interest and ensure her well-being, you are now in a position of authority. A woman will naturally follow your lead. This is submission. Right, that's kind of the end of a chapter there. So let's talk about that. This was a lot at once.
I mean, this is something that can be achieved, and this is sort of, I guess, the old timey ideal. You
Uh,
know, the woman needs to follow the man and stuff. And I don't necessarily totally disagree with that, but boy, you put a lot of effort into this, and what has she done? Just
I,
checked every step of the way if she can trust you.
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
You played the instrument just right, just perfectly for her.
yeah, I mean, it's like, well, it depends on the thesis about women, right? Like she says, women are loyal to emotions, period. So like, if
Well,
women,
this is the thing. You can't be led to your perfect self. You
uh,
have to find it.
yeah,
Nobody can make you into the
but
you you're supposed to be.
most people just aren't going to though. That's the thing. Like
Yeah.
people have to, and so it's like, okay, are women just primarily emotional and they're loyal to emotions, as she says? And if that's the case, is there any other way of doing this? Like,
This, this is actually a really, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's actually a really bad recipe for yourself as a man
yeah,
in a relationship. Because what you do, if you play all the right notes just right, like she's sort of laying out here, you can like have her make some progress, right? You can get her to a better place, right?
mhm.
But you've never cultivated in her or allowed for her to sort of take initiative and agency in getting there herself, right? But since you've done it in
I
such
don't
a
know
way
if
that
that's,
she trusts you and is bonded to you, and you've made her feel the right things at the right time, she's going to be attached to this relationship,
mhm.
and she'll stay attached to the relationship, and but she won't be making progress towards being a better person without you manipulating her or doing just the right thing.
Yeah, maybe.
So it creates this potential to have this long ongoing relationship, and then eventually you find out at the end, after I guess the glamour or the niceness or whatever wears off, that she's not really interested in going there. What she was interested in was you pushing all her buttons just the right way.
Yeah, it's a point. It's a good point. I mean, it kind of, there's a lot of gray area because it's not, I don't have a really clear idea of the specific process she's describing. It's very general. So, I mean, it could be, yeah, I don't like this hypothetical relationship. I don't know how it's going exactly. I don't know exactly what's happening. I'm seeing this very conceptually. So
Mhm.
you could well be right that that's what would often happen. Um, but yeah, just, I don't know, like the, yeah, it's the goal is like you're putting yourself in a position to have to look up to live up to authority, which is earned through, as you say, a perfect, an ideal combination of behaviors.
This is the thing though. Assuming, like you said, her initial thread was saving Western women.
Hmm.
I think if you want to see a better outcome in the West regarding this, it's not about you saving women.
Yeah,
It's about you holding women responsible or something like that. And I'd love to see somebody lay out a thread of how you go about doing that.
well, it's funny because that almost seems like what she's saying, but then you know what I
But
mean.
well,
At
this
the
is
beginning,
more like the red pill MRA, not necessarily MGTOW thing of like stuff Paul Elam has said of look, find your wallet on the first date because you're going to be using it.
oh yeah,
Meaning you have to pay for your end of the date. That's it. And if they don't like it, well, okay, you don't want to be an adult. You have a job and stuff. I'm not, paying for you like you're a child. And I think that's one of the best things I've heard about having a responsible relationship with somebody. Like you treat them like an adult. And even if men and women still have different roles in certain ways, um, yeah, you just decide like I'm not accepting certain behaviors, that are I don't know backward or make you like the beast of burden and then like up on a pedestal. But
yeah,
it's a very gynocentric attitude. This like women need to be saved,
Oh,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. I mean, there's this dichotomy in some of the thought we've paid attention to with like men's rights stuff. Like there's feminism with all these different permutations of it, and then there's people pushing back against feminism, like women, about because the idea is that feminism, a lot of it anyway, is like have your cake and eat it too. It's like women need all these freedoms, but then like let's not focus on the responsibilities they need to accept with those freedoms.
Of course.
And men need to like keep all their responsibilities basically, and not get any of the benefits they got out of it in the past.
Mhm.
But so then there's like the from a woman's standpoint, the pushback against feminism not working and hurting people because the idea that you can have everything and then it doesn't work out for women, but they want to go back to the traditional relationship where the man is sort of in charge and does all this effort and does all this work and stuff, and that's still like not a good deal for the man. And then there's the other thought of like expecting what ostensibly is the premise of feminism, women to be adults with agency who can be responsible, just like men. And I think that's sort of the desirable goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's big. I think when you do that, though, you come up against the aforementioned negative emotions and stuff. And yeah, I mean, like, this is obviously from a very traditional perspective. It's somebody trying to lay out in a basic way how to become I guess, a traditionally sort of dominant husband, dominant in the sense that, you kind of, I don't know, have the overt agency in the relationship.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean,
It's
it is
actually
what it
more
is.
targeted towards, I think, women who are like decent or sort of decent,
Mhm,
but not too developed psychologically.
right,
Like they're still, put way too much emphasis on emotion versus reasoning and stuff.
right, yeah. Well, I mean, people are at all different levels. The fact is, like, if you know, so a lot of people are, and if none of them are going to be in relationships, then we're not going to have a lot of relationships. We're not going to have a lot of families.
Yeah. But this I think is better for somebody who's not quite so valuable. I mean, obviously it's not good for somebody who's like a hoe or trash or something, but somebody who's not like so developed, but at the same time not, has some morality or goodness to them.
Yeah.
Somebody who is more high end and is sort of able to think for themselves and things like that. This isn't good for because this is like stepping down, which is ironically the thing that you would want.
Huh. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I like what you say about accountability. Responsibility, reason, and accountability. I think.
Man. And then I remove responsibility and accountability.
Um, yeah, I think that's a great point. That it's because so much of this is like as men we want to fix the problem, as they say, right? But we're not looking at like why is this the problem we're looking at, right? So it's like how do you save women? What do you mean save women?
The meta problem.
The meta problem. Hey, um, you the guy that doesn't believe in the meta problem. Well, so let's get into our closing words here, our closing thoughts. Do you have
We
any?
do
I
the
mean,
last one.
huh?
I feel like we didn't do the last part.
There wasn't. Well, I was gonna. I mean, we've gone pretty long. If you want to do it, we could do it.
You might as well finish it.
If I mean, it could take a while. I'm just saying. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to do it.
Like one more thing.
Sorry.
Well, the thing with hypergamy is the last part.
Well, I mean, it's a few tweets though.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're giving you more. We've decided you're worth it. Hypergamy. Men and women are hardwired to try harder if there's a risk of loss. Competition. Hypergamy is a base instinct, just as a man sleeping with as many women as he can. Just because the option is there doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion your partner will take it. Men who doggedly pursue their mission and focus on achieving their highest professional potential lower their risk to hypergamy. To prevent gold diggers, downplay your success or possessions. Take note if she's materialistically driven or family driven. If you are a man that has integrity and wants to lead, you have the ability to cultivate the perfect package. Men set the standards. If you have trash standards, then you will continue to get trash. A man's first standard should be that of himself. Hold yourself accountable. Set the bar high. Be worthy of a high-value woman by having integrity, morals, and values. Assume responsibility, and the authority will come. This is how you save Western women.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's truth in it, but I would add to that you have to, the standards for yourself of like, hey, I deserve to be treated,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
a human being also who has value. Has
Well,
to
I
be.
also don't think it's that simple as like assume responsibility and the authority will come. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like it's, of course, it's a great message to like have personal responsibility and integrity, and that like that sort of needs to be the basis for everything else. But like, yeah, there's some deeper issues going on. Like, it's not literally just like, oh, a man has to man up and be a man, and then everything will just go back to normal. Like, no, there's all kinds of horrible imbalances in the systems. And
I think the principle there is I think sound. That if you're a responsible person, that garners a certain kind of authority.
it does, but it's not like, I don't know. Maybe I'm confused because of the sign off that this is how you save Western. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think that like there's a reason so many men aren't doing that. Like there's a reason so many men are demotivated from doing that,
Mm.
and that
Well,
doesn't mean that they shouldn't do it. But it's like these problems don't just go away because I mean, you could say that taking responsibility and having integrity and doing what you have to do, maybe that's like the first step towards there being a level of consciousness among men to
but
take the
but you
actual concrete
have
step.
to accept this level of I don't know, selfishness or self care. Like I think that's an important component because without that, you taking responsibility is just making yourself useful to other people, and then people can just simply use you, right? But if you've got that thing of I'm valuable also, like I value people, and I'm one of those people, and so I'm going to do right by other people. I'm going to do what's best for the whole or the good in this situation, but I'm part of that. And then perhaps you'll screen out people who are looking to just use you being a responsible workhorse in a sense.
Hmm. Yeah.
But I got to say, I really respect how well written and cogent this all was. Like, I don't know that I could say these things this succinctly, even though, and it's much more easy to pick apart what somebody says or disagree with it than to compose something yourself. But yeah, so hats off to her with some thought-provoking tweets.
Indeed. It is our goal to provoke thought, to provoke feeling, to be as human as well we can be while on this earth. What else do you have to say, Joshua? Any closing I mean, we can do a quick little.
Yeah, look to help others, but also look to help yourself and make sure you get what you need. Gotta be a balance there.
Indeed. Self-care. Self-care. Self-nurturance.
Yeah, how is you're inviting other people not to care about you if you're not to some extent caring about yourself.
Well, yeah, it's like, what are you doing all this work for the other person, right? It's well, if you're not caring for yourself and setting, having that standard for yourself, then implicitly it's like, well, you're looking to get that on the back end, right? You're looking for somebody to care for you. And and that's not how it needs to be. It has to be balanced. Modern relationships, classical relationships.
Well, you have to synthesize out what's essential and what works from what doesn't and what isn't.
Right. But as I said, right, potential, are people potential or are people objects? Or are people somewhere in between? A
Do they matter or spirit?
cybernetic machine god, if you will. A half object of tremendous power. Well, anything else?
Check out my channel, Joshua's Magic.
Oh, you know I was going to give you a chance to do that.
Well, I know, but what else was I going to say?
Underline, to highlight Joshua's magic. Deep words, wise words, incomparable wisdom. There's really, I mean, you talk about spiritual topics, you talk about the concept of magic itself, which is really, I mean, even if you don't believe in this sort of thing, there's a lot of profundity in that, right? I mean, it's like we talk about relationships and emotions and communication and stuff, and magic is sort of understood in a sort of exoteric way. It's like, it's all to do with the power of language and the power of symbol and speaking the language of the human psyche and soul, right? So it's quite interesting stuff. I would recommend checking it out.
And you can also see videos of me and Nick talking about that stuff. So if you can't get enough of Nick talking about stuff, go check out some of the videos I've done with him.
Those videos are sensibly sensibly short as opposed to these. These are like big mammoth, just like grab a grab a supersized meal and a thing of whatever you drink and just enjoy. And that's okay. That's how I like it.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it. It was a good discussion.
Thanks for being here. And catch us on our next endeavor, where we will be talking about probably equally interesting things, probably for less time. But this was fun. And I hope you guys out there all have a great day. And I hope you reflect on what you've heard and grow wiser for it.
Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to get notifications.
Indeed. Please do.
May the force be with you.
Please do.